The Weed of the Week is sponsored by the Enlist Weed Control System from Dow AgroSciences, a new herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate.
You work to protect your farm's legacy and to keep it going. Introducing the Enlist Weed Control System, an advanced herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate for exceptional control of tough weeds. The next chapter begins.
Our Weed of the Week is Fall Panicum. Now this is one that we don't normally see on our farm brand, but it's a summer annual grass, and a lot of our weed control methods that we've been using for foxtails and other weeds will do a pretty good job on Fall Panicum too.
Yeah, now when you look at this fall panicum, it does have a hairy ligule just like the foxtails do, so you'd almost mistake it real early on for green foxtail. It also could be mistaken for a number of other grasses. And the whole thing when I'm thinking about this fall panicum, I just think the name's wrong, Darren. I think it should be called summer panicum or spring panicum. Well, when I think fall, I'm initially thinking, oh, it must be a winter annual, but it is just a summer annual.
Well, here's one of the things about it. You know, when we look at pre-emerge herbicides that we're putting out on our farm, usually in late March, early April. And we've got a weed that's going to come up a little bit later than a lot of the other grasses. This is where we run into some trouble. We see the same thing with field sandbur in our area where, you know, it's not that it's that tough a weed to control, it's just that it comes up later. And a lot of times when we're talking about those pre-emerge herbicides, the half-life on them may be 3 or 4 weeks. So a month after we've applied those products, half of that product may be gone already. Now normally it's not a big deal because we're going to have corn that's already starting to get up, maybe it's a foot taller, a little better, and by the time, you know, a majority of that product is worn off, we've got canopy out there and we don't have weeds that are getting through that we're still seeing at harvest time. But here's a couple of things, a couple of reasons why fall panicum's gotten tougher. One, Roundup Ready crops. Now you say, wait a second, I can spray Roundup Post, I should be much better off, shouldn't I? Well, yeah, you are. I mean, you can spray Roundup Post and do a good job controlling it, but Roundup has no residual. And when we're looking at the residual herbicides that are getting used in front of Roundup Ready crops, in a lot of cases, guys are using a half rate or 2/3 of a rate. So think about using a half rate like a month and a half or 2 months before the weeds are going to come up. This isn't going to work very well. That's why we're seeing some more of these summer annual type weeds getting through our Roundup Ready programs. Now by the time it's up, you got to get out there and spray Roundup fairly timely when that weed is, you know, maybe an inch or two tall if you want to stop losing a whole bunch of yield. But again, here's the thing. You may be seeing that fall panicum getting 4 inches tall. Now I can guarantee you you've given up some yield before you got that weed controlled.
All right, let's talk specifically about the corn herbicides. Outlook, Dual, Harness, Surpass, they all seem to be fairly effective on fall panicum. Yes, they're probably not going to be perfect, but they're okay as long as you're using that higher rate like Darren mentioned. You can also try Balance Flex. That does seem to do all right. It's just not quite as good as the other products. Post-emerge, Accent has some activity, Liberty has some activity. I still prefer Roundup. That's the best choice in Roundup crops.
Well, and here's a little bit of a difference. When we think about Liberty, and I really like Liberty Link crops, I like having that option because we have a lot of Roundup resistant weeds. Fall panicum is not Roundup resistant right now, and it's a grass. That's kind of 2 strikes against the Liberty program because Roundup is a little better on grasses than what Liberty is in many cases. So in this particular case, I would prefer to have Roundup Ready crops if fall panicum was your main weed.
The other time we're really worried about these grass weeds is when we're planting wheat. So if you're going to put wheat out there, we really want you to start with a good pre-emerge product like Prepare, for example. Then you can come post-emerge with something like Axial to clean up any escapes. But if you don't get those 2 shots, a lot of times you're going to go out there and spray with a product like Axial that has no residual or very little residual, and you're going to have some panicum either come up later, or you waited too long, you let the weeds get big so you could kill everything, and then you hurt yield.
Now when it comes to soybeans, with any of these grass weeds, we really like starting off with a Treflan, Sonlan, or Prowl down. And you may be using a lot of Authority or Valor or combinations that have one of those 2 products in them because broadleaves may be a little bit tougher for you to kill in soybeans. That's fine. If you really need to use that Authority or Valor and you've got a great broadleaf program go go ahead and stick with that, because post-emerge we've got some choices. Now in Roundup Ready soybeans, of course, Roundup will work. In Liberty Link soybeans, Liberty will work. And I'm not trying to say Liberty's not going to work. You just have to be pretty timely about it and get that weed when it's fairly small to be really effective.
Well, that's it for our Weed of the Week Fall Panicum, but stay tuned. Iron Talk is coming up next.